Yeah.
No, I purposely stopped recording. I purposely didn't start recording until I knew the joke you were going after, and I'm like, yeah, we're laid back, but let's just not record that one.
Right.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're recording now. My name is McLean Warren. Rise and shine, everyone, with Rise Above and Rebate, who sponsor the show. We also have two awesome guests, Amy Weiss and Danny McMillan. I'll let you both kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. And I know you guys do a million things, so we don't have 2 hours to go over everything you guys do, but maybe a quick condensed version of it would be great. Amy, I'll let you go first.
All right, 3 sentences.
Fine, you're on the time frame.
I'm a consultant. I'm an Amazon seller. I'm an inventor, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
And we're a badass in the gym. I've seen your videos.
And I like the gym a little bit. Yeah, I like to move.
A little bit. If none of the other careers work for you, I would definitely say maybe just become like a fitness expert or bodybuilder. And Danny?
Yeah, my name is Danny McMillan. I host a podcast called Seller Sessions and also founder of Seller Sessions Live, co-founder of Data Brill, founder of Seller Pole and Branded by Wim.
Yeah, awesome. And just to repeat our guests, we have Brendan Fields, who owns Rebate, and we have Dan, who owns Dan Trumbull Consulting. So you got quite the eclectic group of people here, all very experienced with e-commerce and more importantly in podcasts, which is what the segment's about really. What made me come up with the idea for this is because, Danny, I know you've been doing podcasts for how long?
On and off for a while, but actually my own podcast that I publish regular was from January 2017.
Okay, so about 3 years. And Amy?
We are on episode, I think, in the 80s of Seller Roundtable. So we started a little over a year ago, and I do that with my podcast partner, Andy Arnott.
Yes, I love Andy.
He's great.
What does that, I know, Danny, you do what, 5 a week or even 7 a week?
Well, through peak COVID, we were doing 7 days a week. We done 75 days in a row, and then we broke it down to 5 days, and then it moved to 4 days, and then we just installed Isabella Hamilton on a Monday. So I'm doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm 3 days. Isabella is 1.
He's a content beast. None of us can compete.
I don't even know. I'm more curious than anything how, we have another visitor. Hi.
This is my assistant, Helena, everyone.
Podcast and talk about she's welcome on. So what I'm curious, Danny, before we get into like the content, is how you come up with that many guests every single day. I mean, you're a machine.
Do you know what? What happens is it just happens. It's one of those things, you just trust the process and it comes together. Like I'll get to a Sunday and I'm thinking, right, who am I going to hit up on Facebook as guests? It's that relaxed because I suppose I put out so much content. You know, when you do like 1 episode a week, it's all like pre-planned and you get all you get. But with me, it's a bit more chaotic. It's like I have 3 things which to do with podcasts, which separates what you do and what others attempt to do, but they just don't keep up. And it's things that anyone can do, right? Content comes first, respect your audience, and consistency. You don't need any qualifications to be a podcaster, but if you do those 3 things, in my eyes, that is how you progress. Because a lot of people start a podcast, like nearly everyone that you're seeing podcasting at the moment in the last 6 months has knocked on my door and I'm open. I'm like, they go, what's the secret? And I said, there isn't a secret. And I'll spend an hour going through everything with them. I always say to them, look, throw away your first 100 episodes. 1, you'll be crap. 2, people are not interested. Your user count is going to be really low. Then year 2, you start to get a bit of traction. then year 3 is where it should take off. You know that when you've got a win or not in terms of the podcast. And it's just consistency. And I think what happens is people start off really well. They do the whole iTunes thing, right? We'll get some reviews. We'll pre-record 12 episodes, separate them by 3 days, build a bit of velocity. But then they get to a point where, you know, you're on the road. Like even when I'm speaking on the road, I'll podcast and put it out and it'll be religious. Like it's done 4 o'clock that time, that day, without fail, no excuse, right? But what happens is people get to a stage where they look at their stats, and that's the worst thing you should do in the world. What you need to do is love what you do, focus on the content and the people, and just to let the numbers take care of themselves when they do, because at some point they'll take off as a rocket ship, or they won't. It will happen or it won't. But it comes down to consistency and commitment. And I think people get 20 episodes in and get disheartened. I mean, I had Norm Ferrer on the show last week, and he said, first thing he said, I've got to say, keeping up with this content, Dan, is, you know, but Norm does more than me, right? He does all the social media banners and everything else. My stuff goes out raw, no edits, nothing else. And because I couldn't keep up. I mean, I'm an audio engineer by trade. So I could sit there and EQ the vocals and compress and limit and all that kind of stuff. But people want content, right? Most people don't give a shit about the intro music because everyone's putting their bad taste in music onto all these people using cheap library music that's terrible. And everyone uses, there's a reason why there's a 30-second skip button. It's to skip that shit at the beginning and the stuff at the end to get to the content, right? So my thing is like, just be raw, put the content out and have frequency, right? So progress trumps perfection, and people will listen to the shows and they won't listen to them all. So I get around 45,000 to 50,000 downloads a month, but people might pick and choose the show. And then new people will come in, some people will drop off, and it will start there. But I think what happens, people come to my door when they've got through the newbie stage and they're going to the advanced stage. So I'm not the first port of call, I'm generally your last port of call. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's knowing who your market is and just being consistent. It's grunt work in the sense that you've got to turn up every day. It's the same thing we talk about entrepreneurs. Showing up is half the battle. That's it. There's no magic.
So true.
Amy?
I think that applies more broadly, right, to just any endeavor. You go through kind of like a long, dark tunnel when you start a business or you start a podcast or you endeavor on anything. You're not going to see a lot of return on that effort for a while. And I think a lot of people fail because they just stop. They start out with a good idea. They work on it for a while. They get demoralized because a month, 2 months, 6 months into it, they don't have a lot to show for it. And they just stop. And if you do that on everything, you'll just have a string of failures because you never saw it through.
Exactly.
And years, I mean, you know, like you said, Jenny, it took you 3 years to.
It took 3 years to really, like, for what I feel to take off. You know, speaking work took off. I get paid well in terms of sponsorship. I don't do affiliate deals. So people pay real money for sponsors for all the events. That allows me to put on things like Branded by Women. Because of the sponsorship money, I don't really care about ticket sales. Yes, we sell tickets after, but that pays for my teams to run these events because they're not cheap. I know you can do a summit on a sixpence and stuff, but what it's allowed me to do through that consistency is be able to get real advertising, which I believe is real value, what the advertiser should get. Because I think everyone works with affiliate deal on a last click attribution. What about social currency? What about if someone's listening to your podcast and believes in what you do and what you're about, and they've helped build their businesses of it and they reached a certain stage in their business? I mean, I got a message this morning, like randomly, thank you. You know, I started 18 months ago. I don't publish this on Facebook. I'm just giving it to a bit of context. So it's about knowing what value that you hopefully bring in as well. So the content's free, but when it comes to advertisers, we are very keen on, right, you've got to understand the social currency being involved in the event is also an attribution, not just the last click. Because if you look at affiliates, if you flood the market with affiliates, the house always wins because someone's going to click on it. Someone's going to get the last click. It's just the lottery, but you lose the social currency again, which comes back to podcasting as well. if you build a podcast and then try and sell on it too early with affiliate links and stuff, that puts off the audience as well, because you're trying too hard. Does that make sense? So yeah.
Yeah, we try really hard to limit the amount of salesy, you know, to vet all of our people who come on the podcast. And just like you, Danny, when we got started, we do have intro music.
But most people do. I started with intro music. I'm using that as an example. So
yeah,
you can go
absolutely.
back to the first 100, there's intro music. Yeah.
But everything else that you said, though, Danny, in terms of like ours is very raw. You know, we do a little bit of editing, but the most important thing is just to get it out there.
And the content. That's what really matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
People give a shit about, that's what they give a shit about. Nothing else. It
Yeah.
don't matter who I am, as long as I'm asking the right questions and they get the content to consume. That is the essence. That's what people want. Give them what they want.
We try to always reach out to our speakers ahead of time, like anyone who we might bring on the show as a guest. We try to reach out to them ahead of time and educate them on our audience. I know Danny does the same thing, because you want to tell them straight up, like, look, we're not selling your stuff here. We need you to provide value to our audience. And same thing, you know, our listeners are constantly reaching out to us and telling us, you know, how much we help them. And, you know, it's an incredible way to not only reach an audience, but just give back and provide value. And, you know, and we base our content on what our struggles are as Amazon sellers, and, you know, what we see as a consultant, what I see my clients struggling with. We try and take that to the next level, you know. And then the other thing is kind of like Danny does, you know, we don't always just focus on Amazon, right? We had Mike McCallowicz on our show. We had Neil Patel on our show. Like we really tried hard to reach out beyond the Amazon community to really think about, what do entrepreneurs need? You know, what kind of things are we struggling with at a higher level that can really help provide that value to our audience, where they can really break through those barriers that we've done. You know, we've made it that far. We want to help them do the same.
I just want to go back to Brandon's point, though, you know, about not giving up and seeing the process through. So Seller Sessions in January 2017 started out as a webinar every 2 weeks. So we've done the webinar and we built a bit of a main list of the webinar. Right, webinars started to fall over because the guests will come in and sign in from hotels with, you know, 0.5 upload speeds, and then it would just crash the webinar because the platform's too. So we thought, okay, how do we build a better controlled environment for it? So then we moved that to YouTube. So we had the main list and we could send the traffic to YouTube, and then it grew 1%, 2%, really pathetic numbers at the very beginning, right? Then we go, okay, we've now built a history on YouTube. Why don't we now do a blog? So then we go get the back episodes, do the SEO work, rewrite all the back content. And it wasn't until after the blog, we decide, do you know what? Let's do a podcast. And it took off like a fucking rocket ship, 40% growth month on month. Just went. And what I'm getting to is find your medium. So if you're going to do something like McLean, very good writer, right? Her medium may be writing. I can't write for shit. And I've done long form articles for various different magazines, Web Retailer and stuff. But an article might take me 3 months, whereas all I've got to do is switch a mic on. So if you want consistency, you need to find what your medium is and where you're most comfortable and where you can produce the volume whilst trying your best to retain the quality as well.
Well, I want to circle back to kind of what both you and Amy touched on, which is, well, in general, podcasts either serve two purposes, right? It's either to entertain someone or it's to educate someone. Those are really the only two reasons people listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is, even within this industry, I'll listen to a lot of podcasts where it's not doing either, you know, like it's a lot of people just talking about themselves or trying to, you know, sell their business, or, you know, it's just not giving actual information to people. And I think that serves an injustice for the podcast and for the audience, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if, like you said, Danny, it doesn't matter who's the one hosting the podcast for the most part, you know, because people really just want the information. And it doesn't matter if it's in a professional context or in a casual one like this, as long as you're getting your message across. That's really the whole point. And that's why what'll keep people coming back sure.
I think there's still a level of needing to be a decent host though, because
but that comes through experience, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But how many times have you seen somebody host a show? I mean, I've been a guest on shows where the host has no idea how to be a good host. And it's really frustrating because you're just like, okay, you're waiting for them to lead you and kind of, so I do think it does matter who hosts it, and it does matter.
And I do believe 100, 150 episodes is where you start to find your feet, your voice, and who you are as a podcast host. I say it takes 150 episodes. At the very beginning, you're writing your notes and you're sitting there like this, and I can't watch the first 100 episodes of Seller Sessions. It's fucking embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Do you know what I mean?
We have 125 more to go before we get our shit.
But that's the thing, but we've got a round table going here. You're not here to necessarily lead all the way through McMillan, right? But the point Amy's getting to as well, if we interview, like for me, I have to work out who have I got on the show, right? So if I've got an Amazon seller who's never been on the show or a podcast before, never done this, I have to help them through the process.
Right.
I need to guide them, and I need to know when to interject and maybe carry it a little bit to help them because they're nervous. It's their first time, everything else. And some people, you don't speak. You just let them roll. And all you do is you nudge them. You look at it's coming up to the top of the hour, and you know where you need to shape the end of the podcast and where to drop, get it into the pocket and then sign off, right? That's just experience how you're doing that. But I think the point you're getting to, McMillan, is someone's just sitting there and talking about themselves, and basically the guests might be a couple of cats and dogs sitting there. That's the problem you got to weigh up. So I think podcasting is about the audience and the guest, and coaching the guests to get the best from them, and finding the right questions for the audience to take on board.
Amy, I'm curious how Danny explained kind of how his I don't even know how you explain it, but he explained his method of finding content and guests. What is your process? How do you decide each week? I assume you do 2 a week based on what you said?
So we actually do one long episode, and we do it a little bit, well, kind of like Danny does, because it just goes live, right? We don't go live, but we invite our listeners to join us on our live recording so that we can get their questions if they want. And then we turn off the recording at the end. We do extra innings is what we call, and answer their questions and just, thank them for being there, and try, like Danny said, to really involve the audience. As far as content goes, like Andy and I are in this every day. Like we do this, so we already know what kind of content we want. And like we're already booked through like I think March is our next opening. So all we have to do is just cast the net out there to the people that we know, like Danny says, are really great and, are going to provide that value. And we just cast the net out, and people, take it up right away. And then sometimes we do headhunt, like, with Neil Patel. Andy actually went to one of his live shows and asked him in person. It was like, because they're not going to say no in person, right? He's like, I want you to be on my podcast. And with Mike McCallowicks, we were able to just kind of reach out to him because, he's very active on social media and stuff, and we were able to get him on the show that way. But so for us, and then we sprinkle in, sometimes we'll do episodes of just us, right? Talking about launch or PPC or whatever it is that the audience is struggling with at the time. But of course that naturally gets worked in any guest that we have, because, we're in it every day, doing this. So it's definitely like a labor of love and passion. And it's one of the most favorite things that I do every week, record the podcast. We just do it once a week, and then we break up that long episode into 2 parts. And that helps us create a lot of content ahead of time, so that if we have a down week where we can't record, we still have enough episodes to kind of spread it out. And then, we use Zoom and to record, and then we have an assistant that just adds the intro music, does some basic editing, creates some banners, that kind of thing, and publishes it for us.
Is your intro music Hanson by any chance?
Bob, no, it's not Hanson, but we hired a guy on Fiverr to do like a voiceover, and you know, he did a really good. I like our intro music, but it is really short, and it's not 30 seconds. That's good. We don't have like sponsored by and all these things.
Right.
It's just like welcome to the Seller Roundtable with Andy Arnott and Amy Weiss. You know, that's pretty much it. So,
Hey, Amy, how do you distribute your podcast? Do you use RSS feeds, obviously, but are you using any particular platform?
Blueberry is what we're using. And then, and of course it helps that my partner is a total SEO and software genius, but yeah, so we use Blueberry. So basically we have it set up on our WordPress website. So the minute that we publish, it automatically goes out to all of the platforms, iTunes, Spotify, everything all at once. So it's like a one and done kind of thing, which screws it up if you accidentally publish something and you're like, oh, that just went out to the world. Whoops.
Yeah. How about you, Danny? Do you use any particular platform to distribute?
Yeah, I did a little research at the very beginning, and I went with Libsyn. Now, Libsyn is one of the oldest ones out there. I just didn't want to get caught in that new startup, great free podcast platform, and then have to move everything over, especially if you was feeling you're going to get a lot of content. So at nearly 600 episodes, that will be a huge job and undertaking to do that. So we use Libsyn. I've stopped doing show notes. Just got to the point because there's so much content going out. When we were doing 3 times a week, it wasn't so bad. So now we use the Libsyn API that publishes to our WordPress backend for the website. And then we've got the player on the website, and then it just updates the content and generates the page on sellersessions.com. And that's simplified that. Kerry takes care of that for me. She runs all the conference businesses and stuff. So she does that daily.
Great. Thank you both for sharing that.
It's fine.
Aside from the technicalities of how you guys produce shows and find content, I'm more interested in knowing, with all the podcasts you have hosted, and with all of the content that you have created, I'll just throw this number out. If you could tell me like maybe 2 things that you have learned the most in life doing them, and 2 of the things that you've learned, like that's just super interesting with regards to e-commerce. I would just love to know, like with all the episodes you've done, are there ones that stand out that you go, man, like this one in particular, I learned this from, and that will always like resonate with me. And Amy, I'll let you go first with that question.
So I honestly can't pinpoint one thing that I've learned. I can tell you the one thing that I've learned, if anything, you know, I already knew this in life, is that I know nothing, and that there's always more to learn. But I think when you do a podcast, it's just such an incredible mentoring and learning experience for the host. Like the things that I have learned in recording every week and bringing on all these new guests and everything, in not only on my podcast, but in my consulting business and, you know, in my Facebook groups, all of that kind of stuff. It has just been an overwhelming benefit to me, because I have learned so much about not only my own business, but other people's business, how to grow, just outlooks, just it's such, like I said, it's the thing that I look forward to most every week, because it's just such a growth and learning experience. And especially even presenting on other people's podcasts. I always tell the folks in my mastermind group this. I'm like, if you ever don't understand something or you want to learn it more in your business, create a presentation on it. Because the minute you have to start kind of turning those wheels, right, you're really going to force yourself to kind of work through the main points of it and understand it. So yeah, it's just grown me so incredibly, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Now, do you ever have, like Danny, I know he has a lot of podcasts that are just more life oriented in terms of like the morale of life, and like, you know, you had Steve Simpson, is that how you pronounce his name?
Simonson,
yeah, who was battling stage 4 cancer, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very interesting show and very personal. And so, and we'll get to that. But for Amy, do you have a lot of podcasts where you actually dive into just like the personal aspects of someone's life and how they overcame any hurdles in their life, whether it's in business or personally?
Well, we have kind of the same question structure for nearly all of our guests. And one question that, well, we have two questions that we always ask. And one of them is like, what is your big piece of advice? Like, you know, how did you overcome this hurdle? Or what is your biggest piece of advice for somebody just starting out? And that really has helped, I know, so many people. It's resonated with so many people. And then the other thing is we always ask our guests what they do to stay motivated and what kind of books they're reading, what kind of things that they're doing for their own personal growth and development. And I think that also kind of encourages people. And we have had other guests on, like we had Caleb Williams. He took over a bank's finance department at 19 years old, and he built this company called Better Wealth. And he helps people, like, you know, if money weren't an object, like how would you live your life? And so it was like a totally different kind of look at finance and stuff like that. So yeah, we definitely do try to focus on some of the bigger picture things. And then we also try to incorporate it even into our regular episodes.
And Danny, same question goes to you.
I would say instead of individual podcast, I would say two things. One is the in-depth series. I love doing that. I love trying to understand the entrepreneur and go through their life. I mean, two people have had me in tears on the show, which was Norm Ferrer and Dan Ashburn, who was brave enough to say, you know, when he was a kid, he had cigarettes put out on him, and what man he's turned in today is absolutely phenomenal. And it's made me well up now, but it's just, you know, I didn't have that in my childhood, but when you see those reminders of where he's come from, where I've come from, and where you got to today, it just shows them that level of resilience and stuff. So I love doing the in-depths. I think with COVID and going 7 days a week, we had the Mindset Sundays that moved to Mindset Mondays. It allowed me to branch out content because pre-COVID, nearly everything we did on Seller Sessions was marketing related. It was PPC, it was giveaways, it was all of these different things. That was the original niche. And as you develop over time, can I do 600 episodes on PPC? I mean, people be scooping their eyeballs out, right? But what COVID allowed us to do is that I had to come up with content, doing the book club and Mindset Sunday and expanding on that. I think really allowed us to open up and it become acceptable when we looked at the downloads and the people feedback. And now I've got to work out, well, what do we do post-COVID? How do we narrow this down? So if you look at what Izza's doing on a Monday now, that's more taking over the step of mindset, right? And so it's now my job to reshape, like making sure we're on the cutting edge of Amazon news for people. Like we had Yael Kabili suspensions in the heart of Q4, her office like a war room. This is what people's having problems with. This is how you can solve it. So they're key things to do. But when you have frequency of content, there isn't always new stuff about Amazon of interest 4 days a week, 3 days a week. So weaving in those in-depths and stuff has been really a useful way of doing things. And I think it inspires Amazon sellers, you know, and then I'll throw in series like Life After Exit. We've done 6 of those so far. And I've got another one who's just popped last week. We'll get him on next week, talk about his experience, because it's that legacy money, right? It's the dream. Everyone wants to get to that unicorn stage. And so, but going back on point is my favorite episodes end up being the mindset episodes and the in-depth series, because I think as they were moments in time when you do them, it's like when we're doing mindset Mondays or Sundays, we're peak COVID. Everyone's fucking shitting themselves, but we're having conversations, and the amount of messages I got is like, you helped me get back on my feet, listen to the show, you had some great guests. And so I think it comes down to moments in time. And I could go through other podcasts, but I think COVID brought out a lot of things. It brought out the best and the worst in people. It showed like stuff about mental health, the struggle that people are having. And I think that's why they become special. If you ask me next year, I might have a different reason, because I think it's just the essence of the time.
Do you think that podcasts offer more help to people with regards to their entrepreneurial life by giving out explicit instructions on how to do certain things, like, actual tips and tricks on how to do listing optimizations or PPC or advertising, social media? Or do you think people get more out of those life lessons from hearing about other people's mindsets and other people's struggles and how they came to be?
Well, if you've got, and Amy can answer this as well, if you just do mindset and you're an Amazon podcast, which we really are, we support the Amazon community, and same as what Amy does, you get a little bit of grace to drift. Some stuff's going to work, some isn't, sorry. But coming around to your point there is like, if it's step by step, that's what they built YouTube for, right? Podcasts are passive. Most of the listeners I speak to, it's in the gym, they're out walking the dog, or they're out, they're working in the office and the podcast is on in the background on headphones. Podcasts are designed to be passive rather than visual, generally.
Yeah, like people aren't taking notes as they're listening to podcasts usually.
I think to Danny's point, I think a lot of the interesting components of a podcast, it's the human story, right? So PPC is super boring. Everybody knows it's boring. It's interesting to hear somebody who has a different outlook or a unique experience that personalizes it. And that's, in my mind, what it's all about. Obviously, Danny is, way more experience than any of us do, except maybe Amy. But yeah, it's the human story, I think, that is what's super interesting about podcasts.
Yeah, I would agree with that in terms of, just that's why we always try to personalize whatever it is. If we found like a cool technique, or if we're talking about PPC and we found a cool technique, we try to give examples and, and just, you guys won't believe this. I tried this and this didn't work. And, but then this happened. And, because people like to listen to that as opposed to like, here's your cost per click. It's just kind of boring. So
now click here. Now click here. Now click here.
Exactly.
Repeat 7,000 times. Congratulations, you're an expert.
There's plenty of that kind of stuff on YouTube, but I think our job as podcasters is to add that personal element, like Brendan said, just, add that personal element and really, and then also, connect with your audience, try and really, I know Danny does such a good job with that. He's always like, I want to say hi to people. I want to connect with them. He does a great job of making people feel like they're part of the show and like it matters to him that they're there. And we try to always as well, just thank people, before we stop the recording button, just thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your feedback for us, bad or good, and it really is, it's about your heart behind it. If you're just out there making a podcast because you want to sell something, then that's the wrong reason to be making a podcast.
I think this also comes down to live events. I think McLean, you were on the show when I talked about it, is that when I go so I speak at a lot of events and I've probably got 15 or 20 on hold once COVID's done. I've got those plus new gigs that are queuing up. And so I don't sit in the green room. I'm very accessible. So like when I'm at an event, I will sit down with an hour and speak to a seller and spend time with them. And I use the same attitude with the podcast. I've been in the music industry. I've gone from having a major record deal, being at a radio show on KISS, and then touring the world, and then lost my record show, lost my KISS show, come off my last tour, and I was under fixing trailers for 80 quid a day. So going from having a 2,000 capacity in the US, doing 19 tours the US and other. So I know how fickle this is, and you've got to focus on the right things in your audience. And I think what happens is once people get to a certain stage, they take that step back. That can come across on the podcast as well. If you kind of see that them and us as their grandiosity starts to rise. But I think it's so important is having that direct connection with the audience. And podcasts are tough because you don't necessarily get that straight feedback. But if you're speaking at events, That's where you get real feedback. That's when people say, listen to your podcast, buy them a drink, sit down with them, listen to them, give them advice, and make an absolute point of it. And I think that is really, really key for longevity.
Well, and I think based on what I know of both Amy and yourself, you both, even though, you know, you're entrepreneurs, you own multiple businesses, you have tons of ventures. To me, what I see within you two is that your favorite thing is to help people.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what makes your both of your businesses and your podcast so successful, is like, that's what really makes that fire come out in you. And I think you kind of need to have that quality to run a successful podcast and to be able to help other people understand how to make their businesses work.
I like to rephrase the words. I love to see people reach their potential, and if I can help them, I will help them.
Awesome.
And it's great.
Awesome, guys. Well, I mean, unless anyone else has any questions, I think this was a great show, and I really, really appreciate you both for coming on.
Let's talk about your podcast, because you're doing a podcast. Is that okay, or we got to go now?
Oh no, we can talk about. Do you mean this one, or do you mean the?
Well, you've got a couple going, have you? We can talk about this one. What's been going on with this podcast?
Well, Brendan, why don't you start that conversation, since I feel like I've been talking this whole time.
Sure. So we've done how many episodes? This is episode 8. So we're well within our 125.
Yeah, but you know what? You'll get there quicker. This is the thing, because I'm a dumb schmuck. It took me that long. It's the same as, like I said, with Isabella bringing on to Seller Sessions. It's like everyone has their training wheels. I've done nearly 600 shows. She's on her 3rd. And she's nailing it already. Do you know what I mean? She's finding her style. She's getting into the groove. She's getting great feedback. It's just I was the schmuck that took that long to reach where I should have got to, if that makes sense. So,
yeah. No, it's fun though. And like, I feel like even just doing video conferences and just talking to people, it just gets you in the flow of just conversation and getting to, I guess, valuable content. That sounds kind of cliche, but just getting beyond kind of the surface layer of, you know, the usual chit chat and actually get to stuff that's interesting. And once you kind of figure out how to peel back those layers and get to what people want to hear about, you know, I think that's kind of maybe when you find your strides.
Cool.
Dan?
I think it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing the show a lot. It's, you know, to both Danny and Amy's point, my favorite part is helping people, and an unexpected and unintended result for me personally was, you know, I've been doing e-commerce a long time. And when you do that and you're on your own, you're just kind of an island. So this networking and meeting people and, you know, and of course you have so much in common because you fought through the same struggles and had some of the same victories and losses. So, and then branching out too, right? I've been Amazon for most of my career. The last few years, I've really branched out into Shopify and Wix and, you know, WooCommerce, all that stuff. So it's the networking opportunity for me personally and for my clients is great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it's been fun. And what I have found to be really refreshing is how many people I've been able to reach out that are more than happy to come on, you know. People pretty big in the business, you know. I mean, Norm Farr's coming on next week. So is Isabella Hamilton. So is Barkus Patty. Like, we do have a lot of people that are really interested in helping out and, you know, bringing their 2 cents to the table. So it's kind of, I was talking to Amy about this. Yeah, was it yesterday that I talked to you? I don't know. All my days are mixed up. But essentially what I think is really cool about the Amazon industry is everyone's willing to help each other out. And even though it is competitive, it's very much like, you know, being able to find mentors and people that just want to support you has been a really cool part of this journey. And I've seen that a lot with this podcast, how many people are willing to come on the show and give their expertise and provide it for all of our audience. So it's been really cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree. The community is great. And, you know, the people who come on these kinds of podcasts and stuff, we get as much out of it as, you know, so it's really, it's an honor to be invited on someone's podcast, or to even, you know, have the floor on, especially like a show like Danny's. You know, it's just, you just want to provide that value. You want to know, like, what does your audience need? Like, I want to just provide the most value, because you know that you're going to get far more out of that than you can ever possibly give. And it's just, it's so cool, because I can't tell you how many, just from Danny's show alone, how many people have reached out to me and said, hey, I heard you on Danny's show. You really helped me with this or that or that. You know, it's just, it just grows you so much. So it's most people are more than happy to come on the show. So don't ever be afraid. If you have a guest that you really want on your show, don't ever, no matter how big they are, everybody started somewhere. Everyone had a mentor at some point, you know, don't ever be afraid to just ask.
Do you know what? I'd like to give Amy a lot of credit here. We done a show, and it was like really advanced level stuff that we were covering, some not necessarily hacks, but what's going on. And you know, it's like, so we had learened on and we had Brandon on, and very, very knowledgeable, right? And then Amy's there as well. And what I noticed about the dynamics is like, these guys are basically dropping science, and then Amy steps up, and it's just like ping, 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 ping. And it was just like watching, I was mesmerized, because maybe not so much on the PPC side, that's more my area, but pound for pound, Amy wipes the floor with me on knowledge when it comes to this space. I think I know quite a bit, but she's phenomenal with her knowledge. And it was fantastic to see. It's like a sparring session. So you had learened and you had Brandon, and just like, and you could see the respect levels there. And what was happening, it wasn't a competition, but one would bounce from one to another. And the audience are just sitting there, mouth open. You know, like you could, in the comments, you're like, keep going, keep it going, Dan. Don't turn it off on top of the hour. Yeah.
And I've seen Amy not even agree with a lot of people that I know she respects. And I think that's awesome when you can be, you know, in a round table with people that, you know, they're all equally intelligent and offer their own unique expertise. But to also be able to say, no, I don't do it like that. You know?
Well, and the cool thing too, like Danny was saying about the round table that we did with Brandon and learened, is we all get tips from each other. You know, like they'll be dropping tips, and I'll be like, I'm writing that down. Wait, you know. So it's like all of us just grow so much. So it's really awesome.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm going to cut this now because we're about 45 minutes in. That was awesome, you guys. I got a lot of this podcast. I hope you all did too. I'm going to let you all go around the room and give yourself a little plug. And we'll start with you, Dan.
Dan Trumbull, DanTrumbleConsulting.com. I can help with pretty much any aspect of e-commerce or Amazon, strictly one-on-one coaching, that sort of thing.
Miss Amy.
Amy Weiss, AmazingAtHome.com. And we do consulting and courses, and podcast is sellerroundtable.com. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Danny?
Just sellersessions.com. Head over there and all the information's there.
Yep. Brendan?
Yep, Brendan, owner of rebate.com, a rebate-based launch platform for Amazon. And now we support all other platforms, Walmart, eBay, Shopify stores, so rebate.com.
And I am McLean Warren. I co-own Liaison Marketing, which is an all-encompassing Amazon marketing company. So look us up. And again, thanks everyone for being on the show. You guys were great. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.